Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for being here. I would like to join in thanking Professor Falik and all the organizers. I believe that this forum, and perhaps we haven't said it enough, but this forum has provided an opportunity for many companies to have high-level meetings. So in terms of efficiency of this meeting, well, this forum was really the top. Indeed, the forum has provided top-level opportunities for the companies to make business. This is my first time at the forum. I am the head of Eastern Europe division of Enel, and I just joined in this post. I actually have a decade experience in the renewables, but I'll try and present you with the situation that I see in Russia. Let's see the first two slides. Here we go. Enel in Russia. Well, I'm sure that you're familiar with Enel. NEL, you've provided here with a number of indicators. Apparently is the greatest utility worldwide, but certainly ranks amongst the most important. It has 60 million users, some 90 megawatt installed. A lot on renewables. As for our distribution grid, we have some 2 million cables, and we're also present in Russia with an important business that has to do with power generation. Over 50% is accounted for by Enel Russia. We produce over 40 terawatt per hour, a seventh of the European Italian market. We also play an important role in the retail. We have a Russian partner. One of the most important clients is the Russian railway, but we have other clients as well. Enel Green Power. Well, this is a very important division of Enel. Now, I don't want to say who's the largest player, but anyway, Enel is a very well integrated utility worldwide. Perhaps it is one of the largest. It covers over 30 countries, as you may see in this map, covering very different countries. And also the technologies are very different. You see this on the right part of the slide. So we use solar and wind power, so these are the most widely present, but we also have biomass and geothermal energy in place. I'd like now to move on to Russia. In one slide, I've tried to concentrate all the key indicators of the power industry in Russia. Top left, you see that the Russian market is very large, over 1,000 terawatt, 4 times as much as Italy. So a large market, a market rich in opportunities. If you look at the other charts, then things get a bit more optimistic than I've heard so far in Russia, and there's an energy generation system which is older than 25 years for as much as 20% of it, and 70%. And we also have a large size of this implants exceeding the lifespan. So these data were provided by the Ministry for Energy, so they are pretty realistic and true. This is the master plan for 2008, and you see what the minister was saying is that the demand was flat over the past years and is going to stay flat. Actually, there's a reduction by 25% of the demand for energy. So the demand is curbed. So there's an overcapacity, which is still increasing, and this is the last chart, bottom right. So you see the situation as presented in the year 2014, where the situation was pretty normal. You see that the excess megawatt are very limited, but you see that we are moving towards an exaggerated surplus capacity, over 90%, which is really too much. So what will follow? What will happen next? I've tried to summarize in 3 bullets. So we have a big market, and this is an opportunity. Certainly there's a need for large-scale investment to be completed by 2020, so as to bring about a modernization of the system of the grid. $500 billion are required. So again, a great potential for investment. This is true for all of us, for all of us working in this area. There's a problem with the surplus capacity, and the market is described as stagnated, but in fact it is declining. So important actions are in the offing, with the decommissioning of the less efficient plants. And now to go back to environmental friendly equipment, well, we know the more obsolete, the less efficient, the more negative for the environment. Or there could be the mothballing of such implants, so that some plants can remain available, can be still used in case of need. So they could be basically temporarily decommissioned. Last bullet. Over 70% of the technology are more than 25-year-old. So what we need is a deregulation, something which is already underway but has to be completed. Such deregulation will allow for investment being made to improve and modernize such plants. So this is very important. This is important for the market, not just to make it more efficient, and Mr. Profumo was talking about energy efficiency, but this is important also to protect and safeguard the environment. Now let's talk about the renewables. Here I've summarized the state of the art. We're already familiar with the background. We know that there's a market in Russia where there is a large availability of fossil fuels. The market is a bit drugged, if I may so, because the price of gas is subsidized, so it is not the real price. So the energy price, as Philip was saying, is very low, and certainly this is not the best scenario, it's not the most appropriate scenario to launch investment for renewables. Anyway, the government has set an objective for itself. There's an incentive scheme that we consider as viable, and there are some suggestions perhaps to be made for the fine-tuning of this basic scheme. With this incentive scheme, a contract is to be entered into on the capacity for renewable generation. A tender should be organized, and this is something actually which is happening worldwide. A fixed tariff for the renewables is obsolete, belongs to the past. Enel, as well as other utilities, believe that the future again is very much in line with what they've done in Russia. So it is the market who is going to set the price. As to recent developments, well, a program was just launched a few years ago. It didn't prove to be very successful because of a number of constraints. Philippe was referring to them. For example, the local content. All governments, when they start off with an energy program, especially for renewable, they would like manufacturers of equipment to set up their companies there. But unless you guarantee a long-term prospect in terms of a high-level objectives, the manufacturers don't come to you. As a matter of fact, the first public tenders, apart from the solar energy compartment, where they found a Russian producer, well, for the wind energy, actually no producer came to the fore. So now the local content requirements were revised downwards, but certainly the local content requirement is an obstacle. Then there's another important issue that has to do with the capex. The maximum level of capex was set that was too much connected to the exchange rate, so much so that investors were really too much scared from making such investments. I'd like to refer to potential areas for improvement. There's a great degree of openness. They feel very open in adopting different suggestions. So I believe that objectives should be raised. Investors should have a long-term prospect. Both investors and equipment manufacturers should rely on the long-term policies. Sometimes, they only make investments unless they know that their business is going to be viable for the next 10, 20 years. I also referred to the exchange rates. If investors are left with the risk of the exchange rate, we know that the ruble has been extremely volatile as of late, and this obviously discourages investors. The local content requirements should certainly be on the increase, but should start with a very low level. And last but not least, we have to reduce to the minimum all the potential hurdles to investment. So we have to have an easy grid connection, permits, land allocation. This obviously can attract investments. So we need a good regulation. But again, perhaps that existing regulation has to be fine-tuned following the above-mentioned recommendations. I'd like to go to my conclusions. The Russian market is changing importantly. We've already referred to much of the system being obsolete. We've talked about also the stagnant demand. We have to put the right balance between demand and supply. There's no balance at this point in time. We know that the price of gas is artificially kept low. And we understand that this is happening throughout Europe. Russia goes through a very difficult time, so we understand that there's certainly all good reasons to keep the price of gas very low. But obviously, in the case of energy producers, this is discouraging factor because the inflation cost is equal to 11, if not 15, so a double-digit inflation cost, and that is very much discouraging, especially if that is matched with a very low, artificially low price of gas. I'm sure that once these reforms are adopted, investments are already available. We've heard about that today. Many multinationals have said that they are willing to invest, and I'm sure that they are going to be further encouraged in investing even more once the adequate changes are introduced. So one of the development that looks forward to, i.e. investing in renewables, can come as a solution, but a lot has to be done before, and then the renewable will bring about a greener industry, which is what we want for the world and for Russia. Thank you.